Hey everybody, welcome back to Slavic Saturday, where we talk about Slavic history, mythology, and folklore. My name is Brendan Noble, author of the Frostmarked Chronicles, which is my fantasy series based on Slavic mythology. This week, we're returning to Slavic Saturday in general after last week's dip into an author question and answer session that I had that I will link up here. But now we're talking about a festival that takes place around the Easter season in modern days, but also has its roots in early Slavic pagan culture, and that is the festival of Śmigus-dyngus. And we're going to talk about both that modern festival and the roots of it, and see how it's evolved over time. Before I dive too far into Śmigus-dyngus, though, I just want to remind you that if you're interested in that series, the Frostmarked Chronicle, and the first book of the series, A Dagger in the Winds, the cover reveal of A Dagger in the Winds is May 15th of this year, so it's coming up very soon, finally after a long wait. And if you want to be the first to be able to see that cover, please remember to join my newsletter down below, where you'll be able to get a early sneak peek of the cover, as well as exclusive access to the prequel novella for the series, The Rider in the Night, as well as other novellas that will be attached to the series as well. So remember to join that down in my newsletter below. But now, let's talk more about Śmigus-dyngus. So Śmigus-dyngus is a holiday that is primarily celebrated in Poland, but there are similar festivals that occur in some other countries. I will put their names down here because I probably can't pronounce them, and I've already had people before say how I even struggle to pronounce some of the Polish names sometimes. So there they are. There's many different festivals. I'm mainly going to be talking about Śmigus-dyngus because that's the one I know most about, but a lot of these festivals have similar traditions. And so in the modern day, these traditions often are called Wet Monday because they occur the day after Easter Sunday. And that is Wet Monday because the tradition is quite silly, kind of similar to the silly name Śmigus-dyngus really sounds like, and that is people dumping water on each other as just part of the celebration for the spring season. And no one is really considered safe. This festival where people dump the water on each other, though this is much less common now, there were also traditions around jokingly hitting people with, especially their shins and calves, with a willow branch. And all of this is meant as kind of a fun celebration in the start of spring, especially after the Easter and Lent season that sometimes, is a little bit more restrictive. And so this is a tradition that has been accepted today by the Roman Catholic Church, as well as just society in general in Poland. And so this is a very widespread event. It's even thought that visitors in Poland sometimes are not safe, and you probably shouldn't carry on Śmigus-dyngus any type of electronics that could get broken because of water getting dumped on you, because there is a good chance you will get water dumped on you. There were traditions back in the origin section that we will talk about that could help save you from this event occurring, but in modern days, it's much less of a event that you're going to be able to save yourself from. It is kind of ironic that the Roman Catholic Church has accepted the festival and holiday, considering the history of it that we'll talk about in a little bit, but it has become both a religious event around Easter as well as just a event among the Polish culture in general, as well as some of the other Slavic nations we talked about. So like many things in Slavic mythology, folklore, or just history in general, especially around the early Slavs, we really don't know the true origins of Śmigus-dyngus because the early Slavs, at least before Christianity came around, there wasn't a writing system that allowed them to write down the events that they were taking place. And so Śmigus-dyngus is one of the things that it's been passed around very well, I think, traditionally compared to a lot of the other things that the early Slavs did. And so we do have a pretty good idea of what was at least done, though we don't know exactly the exact context or the exact times that it was done, but we have a pretty good idea. And one of these ideas, though there are some debates around this, is that Śmigus and Dyngus were two different holidays, actually, or celebrations, maybe around the same time, or at least different parts of the event. And that is with Smingus being the event in which boys would dump water over the heads of the girls who they were fond of, and then hit them with the willow branches that we talked about earlier. Again, this was jokingly, and it was actually meant to be kind of a precursor to marriage, kind of similar to the Not Kupali festivals that we've talked about before. in terms of these fertility festivals and things like that. And that was kind of meant to be this kind of fun event. And then Dingus was meant to be a different type of event, both very similar, where you could actually bribe your way out of getting the water dumped on you by either bribing the aggressor with either eggs or some type of other trinkets that would keep them away, jokingly, and so that they wouldn't dump the water over your head. The origins of the festival also there was often a kind of parade or procession through the village in which the dumping in water and things occurred. It sometimes parades modern day as well, kind of following that tradition. But this tradition also had people dressing up sometimes as straw men and other things like that, which is kind of interesting because it connects to another spring festival that we know about, which was the Drowning of Marzano, that took place on the spring equinox. And there's potentially a connection here because during the Drowning Marzana, there's a straw effigy built of Marzana or Marana, who is the goddess of winter, and the effigy was considered to be the representation of her dying during the equinox. And her effigy would be paraded through town, saying that it was collecting all of the bad spirit and the bad things and curses throughout winter, and then burned and drowned. And so perhaps this is a similar type of thing, because the dumping the water over people's heads and then the batting them with the willows was theoretically meant to say that it was leading away the bad demons or the bad curses of things of winter. And so perhaps these holidays were either connected or different regional variations of similar events, which is kind of fascinating. So Śmigus-dyngus is one of the few things that really doesn't appear in the Frostmarked Chronicles. And of the things that I talk about on this channel, it is so close to the Drowning Marzana, like I talked about. They're only a couple weeks away from each other, that it can be really hard to include both. So I have the start of the Frostmarked Chronicles with A Dagger in the Winds taking place very much around the Drowning of Marzana. So there's some traditions of Śmigus-dyngus that take place during this event, but it is much more of the Drowning Marzana and less of Śmigus-dyngus. Maybe Śmigus-dyngus will appear in a novella or later in the series, but right now I don't have plans for it, which is kind of rare for this series of things I'm talking about on this channel. But, it's a fantasy world, and I try to include as much as I can, but you can't include everything. And that's all I have for you today on the Slavic Saturday video. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please remember to like and subscribe down below. I come out with these videos every Saturday.